Hello, in this video, I'm going to review missing attribution for Shopify stores that are using SlideRule analytics to send data from their Shopify store to Google Analytics 4. So this is very specifically only going to apply to people who are using our app, SlideRule Analytics, to send data to Google Analytics 4 from their Shopify store, and they're seeing a high percentage of not set attribution. So attribution could be on session source, on default channel grouping, etc. On default channel grouping, it might come in as unknown. So if you see that, this is for you. If you see session source not set for a high percentage of purchases, then this video is for you. Okay, cool. So before we dive in, let's just talk real quick about what is going on here, right? So SlideRule Analytics sends purchase events server side. And what's often happening when you see session source not set is that Google, our server side purchase event that we have, Google Analytics 4 is not able to find any session source, any attribution for that purchase. That's different than saying it's direct, right? If it's saying it's direct, what it's saying is Google Analytics 4 is finding attribution for that user. It's just that that purchase was considered, Google Analytics 4 considers it a direct purchase. This is specifically about the session source not being set. So we have no attribution for it. So let's dig into what might be going on here. So first, you're going to create an exploration, and you're going to import these dimensions. Shopify landing site, Shopify source, transaction ID, session source, and SlideRule identified. And you're going to build a very quick report right off the bat with just session source and purchases. You're going to import the metric purchases and put it over here. Okay, and so now I can see on this report here that almost 20% of all purchases are coming in with no attribution. Again, this is not direct. This is 20% of orders are coming in with no attribution whatsoever, right? So that is a lot. If you see less than 10%, if you see less than 5%, you could probably stop the video right now because it's likely ad blockers that are just blocking Google Analytics 4, and because we send the purchase event server side, you're still getting the purchase event for them. You're just never going to get any client side attribution for them. So if it's less than 10, if it's less than 5 for sure, I would just say, hey, if it's less than 5% of purchases are coming in with session sources not set, then it's ad blockers and there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, if you see more than 5%, you're going to want to dig in deeper. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the Shopify source. This is a custom dimension that SlideRule Analytics sends to Google Analytics 4, and it comes straight from Shopify, and it is what Shopify tells us is the source. So if you're looking at the order, Shopify would tell you, hey, the source of this order is web, or there's many other ones. So what you're going to want to do is drop Shopify source here next to right under session source, and then you're going to want to nest the rows. So go nest rows. Cool. And what that does is it breaks it out and it gives me a really clear view of what's happening here. So I can see here that Google Web, that's good. This not set. Now, what's happening here? We see a lot of those orders. Remember, there was 20% of purchases were session source not set. Now we've broken down session source. Only a little over 10% of them are coming from web. The rest are coming from POS, that's point of sale. We fire events server side with SlideRule Analytics, so point of sale events will make it into Google Analytics 4, but of course they don't have a session source because there was no web session associated with point of sale orders. And same with Shopify draft orders. Those are orders that people create. They're actual orders, they're not draft orders, but they're orders created from draft orders. So that's usually a staff member goes in and is building an order for someone and then collects their payment info via the phone or whatever and hits submit, and that draft order gets turned into a real order, and that's why you'll see this. You'll see, sometimes you'll see a bunch of numbers. Those are the app IDs. So if you have a bunch of apps that create orders for you, you might see a lot of them. And those are also not something we're going to have any session source necessarily for. And then the other one that's super common that you might see is subscription contract. Those are recurring orders from subscriptions. Those also are not going to have any session source. In fact, all we really care about is where session source is not set and the Shopify source is web. So we can see here that number is getting pretty close to our 10% threshold where it could be ad blockers, right? And so we're pretty close. We went from about 20% of orders with session not set. A lot of those were point of sale orders in this case, right? And for web orders, we're getting down to close to the 10% level. We're right around 12% or something. So we'd want to investigate further. The next thing I'm going to pull up is SlideRule identified. Okay, what this is it's a little dimension that SlideRule Analytics sends that tells us whether or not SlideRule was able to associate that purchase event with a client-side session. And so we can see here, in this case, something funky is definitely going on, where if it were an ad blocker, I would expect SlideRule identified to be 0 because the ad blocker is blocking the client-side session, and we're just not going to have any attribution for that. So in this case, it's not an ad blocker. This might be an ad blocker. 176 orders, purchases, have session source not set where the Shopify source is web and SlideRule is not identified. And that's well under our ad blocker threshold of 5 to 10%. So in this case, in that case, we would just say, if that were all we were seeing, we would just say, hey guys, this is probably ad blockers and there's nothing we can do about it. But we see here that there's 454 orders that are coming in where SlideRule is identified. And for some reason, Google's not able to associate that with a session source. Again, Google Analytics 4 does weird things. We can't always predict exactly what's going to happen. But if this is a high percentage of orders, what I want you to do is you're going to create another report here. And I just put a new tab over here. And you're going to import on this one. I want you to put the transaction ID, the Shopify landing site. That's what Shopify thinks the landing site was for that order. And again, SlideRule identified. Then I want you to filter for Shopify source exactly matches web and session source exactly matches not set. Okay. And if you do that, I'll show you that. If you do that, you will get a list of transaction IDs, and you can actually take those transaction IDs and you can go look in Shopify, search for those transaction IDs, and it'll pull up the transaction, and you can see if there's any patterns for those that are coming along. Like, sometimes it comes up that they're all PayPal Express checkout or something like that. All right. So look through those orders, and if you don't find anything, what I want you to do is so if you have greater than 10% of orders, definitely greater than 5, but if it's greater than 10, what I want you to do is export these sheets that you created here, export these reports, export them to a Google Sheet by clicking there, export both of them, and send them over to us. So you can send them to info@slideruleanalytics.com. and let us know your Shopify store name, and we will take a look at it and see if we can see what the issue is here. We're probably also going to ask for partner access to your Shopify store so we can try to debug what's going on there. And you'll also probably want to grant Google Analytics 4 access to us at access@slideruleanalytics.com. Okay, cool. So that's again, if you see Shopify sources not set for if you see session sources not set for Shopify source web, and if that number is greater than 10% of all orders, you can do a little investigation on the transaction IDs yourselves, and then email us and let us know your findings, and we'll take a second look.